All right, let's demystify the third pull when it comes to the snatch or the clean in Olympic weightlifting. First, let's make sure we're speaking the same language and talking about the same positions. So let's look at the first pull. We're talking in the first pull from the floor to above the knee. The second pull, we're looking from that above the knee through the drive at the hip. And the third pull, we're looking from that drive at the hip to pulling underneath the bar to the catch position. So to demystify it, the first thing we need to focus on is what I said there, pulling underneath the bar. One of the first things athletes get off base when they think about that third pull is very often when we're learning, we haven't realized that we're trying to pull the bar above our heads versus trying to pull ourselves underneath the bar. And that is key to demystifying this elusive pull in this technique. Now, when I talk about pulling underneath the bar versus pulling overhead, I love to ask athletes what they know, what they understand, how they would describe the difference between a power version of the lifts versus a full version of the lifts. So I'm going to give you a second. How would you answer that? What's the difference between a power and a full? My response is there is no difference except for one we put on the brakes. And what I mean by that is when we do a power or when we do a full, in both of those, we're pulling underneath the bar, except for the power, we're immediately putting the brakes on before we break parallel to get pushed into a full lift. Now, a lot of athletes will answer that question by saying the power, they need to pull the bar higher. And this is where we start to separate a power and a full into two different movements that no longer benefit each other when we're training. So keep that in mind, because if you're thinking you have to pull the bar higher to get it overhead, you're making the third pull much more difficult, especially if your goal is to lift the most weight in the Olympic lifts. Another key point to keep in mind to demystify the third pull is this pull was set up by the second pull. So if something went off base in either the first pull or the second pull, the drive at the hip, if any of those are incorrect or something had fallen apart, the third pull is not going to be able to execute at nearly as efficient as it could have. So if you're putting all of your attention in the third pull, but your issue's really in the second pull, keep that in mind that you're working to fix the wrong thing. And this is where coaching eyes can be invaluable, because we don't know what we don't know. Now, in the third pull, what we're always trying to do is be quick underneath that bar. And one thing I want to highlight for you is our foot movement. Good lateral foot movement where off that drive, our feet move slightly laterally and land flat, increases our speed underneath the bar. It allows our hip to accelerate down versus keeping our feet on the floor. Keep that in mind if you're keeping your feet on the floor. Now, as that bar is coming off the hip, you need to pull from the hip all the way overhead to that catch position as hard and fast as you can. Our arms continue to pull off that hip all the way through to where we're stretching the bar overhead. Keep that in mind. And finally, to tune this in on yourself, start light. Typically, athletes only start to focus on technique when the weight gets heavy, and that's way too late, because now you're fighting a heavy load, trying to get your motor pattern to change. Start when this is light. Start changing direction and going underneath the bar when the bar is light. Start to pull all the way through the arms when the bar is light. Take these key points I've mentioned and apply them immediately from the empty barbell all the way up to when the weights get heavy. Now, keep in mind what I said around if our issue's in one of the other pulls, that's really the issue, because the third pull is later down the line. This is where getting coaching eyes on you is invaluable, and I invite you, if you need support in this, reach out, set up a discovery call with us. We'll connect, we'll talk about where you're at, where you want to go, and you'll get the support that you need. Now, if this video has helped you, make sure you smash that thumbs up button, share it forward, send it to a friend that it could help, and new videos out next week. Make sure you subscribe, and we'll see you next week.